I should have known better. Looking back now, I can see all the signs. How my family always preferred Vanessa. How my mother never missed a chance to compare us, always smiling at her loud laughter and sneering at my silence. How my father barely looked up from his paper when I told him I got promoted. But the moment Vanessa mentioned she wanted the same job, he celebrated like she cured cancer. Still, I didn't think they'd throw me away like trash. Not until the day my world crumbled in the most humiliating way possible. I was supposed to get married to Chris. We dated for 3 years. He wasn't perfect, but he was stable, attentive, and I thought we had something real. I supported him through job changes, health scares, even his emotionally stunted relationship with his own parents. I thought we were a team. And Vanessa, my baby sister, was the maid of honor. The one I trusted with every wedding detail. A week before the wedding, Chris called off the engagement. Just like that. His voice was cold. I can't marry someone who pretends to be perfect in public but sneaks around behind my back. Thought it was a joke. Until he forwarded the screenshots. Fake texts, edited photos, doctored timestamps. Someone had gone through serious effort to paint me as a cheater. It didn't take long to find out who was behind it. Vanessa, my sister. She'd been sleeping with Chris for months behind my back. She knew everything about our relationship. She was in my house, eating my food, trying on bridesmaid dresses while she plotted to steal my fiancé. And she didn't stop there. She planted fake messages, told our parents I had been unfaithful, and cried to them about how heartbroken she was that I ruined everything. And my parents? They didn't ask questions. They didn't even call me. They believed her instantly. "You've embarrassed this family enough," my mother hissed when I showed up at their house the next day, shaking with rage and confusion. "Vanessa was always the one with a good heart. You've just been pretending to be good." My father refused to look me in the eye. "We'll be attending the wedding," he said calmly. "But not yours. Leave your keys. We don't want this kind of scandal in our home." And just like that, I was homeless, heartbroken, and completely alone. I had no one. My so-called friends stopped answering my calls. Chris spread rumors. Vanessa blocked me after sending a single text. "You never deserved him. He just settled." I helped him see that. I wanted to scream. To break something. To disappear. But I didn't. Instead, I packed what little I had into a duffel bag, walked out of my parents' house with tears I refused to let fall, and started walking. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there. Not another second. Hours later, as the sun began to set and my feet throbbed in my worn-out flats, I saw a glowing hotel sign up ahead. One of those fancy ones where rich people stayed when visiting the city. I stepped inside just to sit. Just for a second. My whole body ached. The marble floors were cold and smooth beneath me. No one noticed me at first, just a girl in a wrinkled shirt and swollen eyes. I tucked myself into a quiet corner near the bar, far from the golden chandeliers and the clinking glasses. And that's when he walked in. I didn't know who he was then. Just a man in a dark suit, sharp jawline, and a tiredness in his eyes that mirrored mine. He looked like the kind of man who owned the world and was tired of carrying it. Our eyes met. And just like that, my story took a turn I never saw coming. He didn't look like someone who belonged in my world. Everything about him was sharp, effortless, expensive, from the tailored navy suit to the confidence in his walk. But when he looked at me, it wasn't pity. It wasn't judgment. It was curiosity. And something else I couldn't place. "Waiting for someone?" he asked, his voice smooth but not arrogant. I hesitated. I should have lied, said yes, kept my head down. But something in me was too tired to perform. "No," I said softly. "Just passing time." He nodded and looked out at the hotel lobby as if he were passing time too. For a few seconds we sat in silence, strangers in two very different worlds, both hiding something. Then he surprised me. "You want a drink?" I blinked at him. I don't think I belong at this bar." He smiled. Not the kind people flash out of politeness. This one was warm. "Ew. That's funny. I was just thinking the same about myself." Maybe it was the exhaustion. Or the ache in my chest that hadn't stopped since Chris tore my world apart. But something about him made me nod. I followed him to the bar like someone in a dream. He ordered us 2 drinks, non-alcoholic, when he noticed the hesitation in my eyes. We didn't exchange names. He didn't ask what happened to me. And I didn't ask what he was running from either. We just talked. About random things. About silence. About the way people pretend to be fine when they're falling apart inside. About how sometimes, the people who hurt you the most are the ones who claim to love you. I told him I was having the worst day of my life. He said he understood. I lost someone recently, he confessed quietly. Not in the way people usually mean. But I lost her. She chose something else. And I wasn't enough. That was the first time I saw the pain in his eyes. Quiet. Familiar. We didn't talk after that. Just sat in silence, sipping drinks, sharing something unspoken. Eventually he stood. I have a suite upstairs, he said. There's food, room service, extra blankets. You can rest. Nothing more. Just rest. I should have said no. Everything my mother ever taught me screamed at me not to follow a man to his room. But he didn't feel like a danger. He felt like a pause. A chance to stop running. So I said yes. The suite was huge. Bigger than my entire apartment back when I had one. He offered me a t-shirt and pajama pants to sleep in and disappeared into another room to make a call. I stood there like an imposter in a movie, unsure what to do. There was food, fruit, pastries, pasta, things I hadn't tasted in weeks. I ate like someone who didn't know when she'd eat again. When he returned, he handed me a phone charger, a soft towel, and the Wi-Fi password like it was the most normal thing in the world. No questions. No pressure. You can take the bed. I'll be out here on the couch. I looked at him. Why was he doing this? But I didn't ask. I just nodded, whispered a thank you and stepped into the bedroom. And that should have been it. But around midnight I woke up from a nightmare. My face was wet with tears, my chest tight, panic pressing down like a weight. I stumbled out into the living room, unsure of what I was doing. He was awake, sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. You okay? He asked gently. I nodded. Then shook my head. I didn't know anymore. He stood, reached for a blanket, then paused. I don't know who kissed who first. It just happened. It wasn't slow. It wasn't careful. It was messy and desperate and full of emotions neither of us wanted to name. Two broken people reaching for warmth in the middle of their own cold storms. That night, I lost myself. Or maybe I found something I didn't know I needed. In the morning he was already gone. A note by the bedside. You looked peaceful. I didn't want to wake you. Rooms paid for through the week. Take care of yourself. No name. No number. Just a memory that burned into me like a second heartbeat. I never expected to see him again. But life had other plans. The hotel room felt colder after he left. For the next 2 days I barely moved. I stayed curled up in that massive bed, not sure what to feel. Not sure if what happened between us was a mistake or a strange kind of blessing. But by the third morning I checked out, left the fluffy robes and mini soaps behind and walked back into reality. Reality was brutal. I had no job. No apartment. No money beyond the few crumpled bills in my purse. The 1 week stay gave me just enough rest to stop crying every hour. But not enough to fix anything. I spent the next few days hopping between a women's shelter and fast food joints, trying to look presentable enough to beg for interviews. The city didn't care. I applied for everything. Waitress, receptionist, store clerk. Even janitorial work. Every time I left the interview room with forced smiles and fake promises. We'll call you. They never did. Then the morning sickness started. At first I thought it was the food at the shelter or just stress, but then it kept happening. Every morning without fail. I'd wake up nauseated, weak and dizzy. I tried to ignore it until I missed my period, then missed another. I bought a cheap test from the corner store. Just one. I couldn't afford two. I took it in the cracked bathroom of the shelter, surrounded by peeling paint and flickering lights. 2 pink lines. Clear. Bold. Unmistakable. I stared at the test for a long time, like if I looked long enough it would change its mind. But it didn't. I was pregnant. And I knew exactly who the father was. There was a moment where I just sat on the cold bathroom floor and let myself cry. Not the ugly sobs I'd done when I lost Chris or when my family betrayed me, but quiet, shaking tears. Tears of fear. Of disbelief. Of exhaustion. What was I going to do? I didn't even know his full name. All I knew was Eli. That's what the bartender had called him. No last name. No contact info. Just a memory and a baby growing inside me. I spent the next few days in a haze. I didn't tell anyone. Not that I had anyone to tell. I kept applying for jobs. Finally, a small diner on the edge of town took a chance on me. The manager, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes, handed me a worn apron and said, "Start Monday." It was barely enough to cover a tiny room I found for rent. More like a glorified storage closet, but it was mine, and it was safe. I started saving every penny. I didn't buy anything unnecessary. No baby clothes. No doctor visits yet. I couldn't afford it. But I held my stomach sometimes and whispered promises. I'll figure this out. Somehow. And I meant it. Every night I dreamed about him. His laugh. His warmth. That sad softness in his eyes. I wondered what he'd think if he knew. He'd want to know. But I also wondered if he was already gone from my story. One night I tried searching online. Eli. Dark suit. Fancy hotel. NYC. Not surprisingly, it got me nowhere. I gave up. I stopped hoping he'd walk back into my life. I focused on surviving. On saving. On keeping food in my belly for the baby's sake. But fate has a strange sense of timing. Because just when I had accepted I'd raise this child alone, I walked into work one rainy Thursday evening to find my entire life about to change again. There, in the corner booth of the diner, so completely out of place it almost made me laugh, was him. Looking right at me. And just like that, my heart forgot how to beat. It didn't feel real. He looked like he belonged on the cover of Forbes, not sitting in a rundown booth at a greasy spoon diner where the syrup bottles stuck to the table. He was in another tailored suit, black this time, with his sleeves rolled up and a pen in hand, scribbling something on a notepad. And yet there he was. The same man who offered me kindness when I had nothing left. The same man I thought I'd never see again. The father of the baby I was now quietly growing inside me. He looked up as I walked past with a tray of food for another table. Our eyes locked. I stopped breathing. He recognized me. His brow furrowed first, like he wasn't sure if he was dreaming. Then his expression softened, an almost smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He stood up slowly and whispered, "Serena?" I hadn't heard my name said like that in weeks. Gently. With disbelief and something like relief. I wanted to run. Hide. Instead I nodded. "You remember," I said, trying to sound calm even as my heart threatened to jump out of my chest. "I never forgot," he replied. "I told my manager I needed a break." She took one look at my face and nodded. 10 minutes. I led him outside, where the rain had stopped but the pavement still glistened under the street lamps. The air smelled like coffee and wet concrete. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I could ask you the same," he said. "I've been looking for you." I blinked. "You were?" He nodded. "I didn't know your last name. Or how to find you." I went back to the hotel, asked around, tried tracking the reservation. Nothing. "I thought maybe you didn't want to be found." I swallowed hard. "I didn't think you'd even remember me." Eli looked at me for a long time. Then said quietly, "You were the only thing I remembered clearly from that whole month." My throat tightened. I wanted to tell him everything. But how do you drop, "Hey, I'm pregnant," in a casual sidewalk conversation? He ran a hand through his hair. "I still don't know what happened that night, Serena. You looked so lost. So tired." I didn't want to ask then. But I want to know now. "If you'll let me." We sat on the bench outside the diner. The street was quiet. I told him everything. About Vanessa. About the lies. The betrayal. The fake messages. The engagement that ended in humiliation. My family throwing me out. The weeks I spent trying to survive. I didn't cry. I'd cried too many times already. He listened, jaw clenched, fists tight. When I finished, he was silent for a long time. "I want to find that sister of yours and ruin her," he muttered under his breath. I laughed, bitter and tired. "You wouldn't be the first." He turned to face me. "What about now? Are you okay?" I hesitated. And then I took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." His eyes widened. He didn't speak at first, just stared at me like the words hadn't made sense. "I didn't mean to find you just for this," I added quickly. "I wasn't even looking for you. I thought I'd never see you again. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know." He leaned back, hands on his knees, exhaling slowly. Then to my shock he smiled. "Serena, thank you for telling me." I waited for the rest, for the rejection, the panic, the excuses. But they never came. Instead, he reached over and gently placed a hand over mine. "You're not going through this alone." Not anymore. And just like that, everything inside me that had been tight and tense for weeks started to loosen. He meant it. I could feel it in his voice, his eyes, the way he held my hand like it was precious. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. I didn't sleep much that night. Eli had offered to walk me home after our conversation outside the diner. I almost said no. I was embarrassed of the tiny room I called home. But he insisted, and somehow his presence made the walk feel less cold. When we reached the building, I hesitated on the steps. The hallway light flickered and the paint was chipped. He didn't flinch. Didn't judge. "You really live here?" he asked gently. I nodded. For now. He didn't say anything. Just looked around, then at me, really looked. At the fatigue under my eyes. The way I subconsciously cradled my belly now, even though it was still flat. "You don't belong here, Serena," he said softly. "I don't really have a choice," I whispered back. He stood still for a few seconds, then said something that changed everything. "Come with me." I blinked. "What?" "I have an extra suite. It's in a quiet part of town. Clean, safe, comfortable. You'll have privacy, food, doctors, whatever you need. It's yours." I was too stunned to speak. "You want me to live with you? I want you to be safe, taken care of. You don't owe me anything, Serena. But you're carrying my child, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't care. I care more than I thought I could." My throat tightened. He wasn't proposing. He wasn't promising love. But he was offering safety, kindness, stability. Things I hadn't had in so long I forgot what they felt like. And so I said yes. The next morning, Eli picked me up in a sleek black car that looked like it belonged in a movie. The driver didn't ask questions. I sat in the back, feeling like Cinderella in her second act. The suite he brought me to was nothing like the first hotel. It wasn't flashy. It was warm, minimal, beautiful. A wall of windows looked out onto a quiet courtyard. Soft furniture. A stocked kitchen. A walk-in shower with fluffy towels. And a guest room with a crib already in the corner. "I had a feeling," Eli said when he caught me staring at it. "Just in case." He gave me a key card and said, "Stay as long as you want. Forever if you need." I stood there holding the key in my hand like it might disappear. The next few weeks were a dream. He sent a private OB-GYN to check on me. Bought prenatal vitamins I couldn't even pronounce. Filled the fridge with food. Left flowers by the door some mornings. He didn't smother me. He gave me space. But he was always there. Checking in, asking how I was feeling, showing up with smoothies and warm blankets. And the baby was growing. At 10 weeks I heard the heartbeat. A tiny, fast rhythm that sounded like hope. Eli was with me for the appointment. He cried quietly in the corner when he heard it. I pretended not to notice. Afterward he took me to a rooftop garden and said, "I know this wasn't the plan. But I don't regret it. I don't regret you." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My heart was too full. One night I asked him, "Why are you doing all this? You barely know me." He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Because I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who want things from me. Money, power, favors. You didn't want anything. And still you gave me something real. I'm not going to let you carry this alone." And that's when I realized, he wasn't just a billionaire. He was the kind of man I thought only existed in stories. The kind who saw a broken girl, pregnant and abandoned, and didn't walk away. He stayed. And slowly I started believing. I might actually deserve this. Growing up in my family, it was this. When people see you winning, especially after they've kicked you down, they don't clap. They scheme. I should have expected it. It started small. A missed call from an unknown number. Then a text from my cousin I hadn't heard from in 2 years. "Hey Serena, just checking in. Heard some exciting things. Let's catch up." I ignored it. I didn't owe anyone anything. But it was like someone opened the floodgates. Vanessa showed up first. It was a Thursday morning. I was halfway through a prenatal yoga session when the concierge called and said there was a woman in the lobby insisting she knew me. I froze. My heart told me not to go down. My curiosity betrayed me. She was standing there in designer sunglasses and heels too high for the hour. Her hair was perfectly styled. Her smile, fake as ever. "Wow, Serena," she said, looking around the luxurious lobby. "You've been busy." I said nothing. She laughed like we were old friends meeting for brunch. "I heard through the grapevine you were seeing someone. A billionaire, no less. Is that true?" Did you finally learn how to keep a man? There was the venom under the sugar. What do you want, Vanessa? She blinked. Can't I check in on my big sister? I stared at her. You stole my fiancé, lied to our parents, helped ruin my life. You don't get to pretend we're close. Her mask slipped just for a second. Her lips tightened, but she recovered quickly. Well, she said, glancing around again, I hope you know what you're doing. Men like him, they don't stay. They upgrade. And when he realizes who you really are. I turned and walked away before she could finish. I wasn't the same Serena she remembered. But she wasn't done. A week later I got a call from my mother. The same woman who told me I was dead to her. Serena, she said, her voice dripping with guilt. I didn't believe for a second. Vanessa told us the truth. About everything. We didn't know what she was doing. We were manipulated too. I almost laughed. Now they believed me. Now when they heard I was living with a billionaire. She sniffled into the phone. You know we're family. Family should stay together. We can help you raise the baby. I could practically hear the calculation in her voice. I took a deep breath. You didn't want me when I had nothing. Now that I have something, suddenly I matter. Serena, that's not fair. Goodbye, Mom. And I hung up. Eli found me crying in the kitchen that night. I tried to hide it, but he just sat beside me and said, You don't have to pretend with me. So I told him everything. About Vanessa. About the call. About the way they only seemed to show up when they smelled money. His jaw tightened. I can make sure they never contact you again. I can have someone. No, I said softly. Let them watch me win. He stared at me for a second, then smiled. God, you're strong. I wasn't always. You are now. Later that night, Eli pulled me close and whispered, Let me take you away this weekend. Just you and me. No drama. No snakes. Just peace. I nodded against his chest. I'd like that. For the first time in a long time I felt safe again. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Snakes don't give up easily. And Vanessa was coiling for another strike. We went to the lake house that weekend. It was tucked away in upstate New York, surrounded by tall pine trees and silence so soft it felt like healing. No paparazzi. No phone calls. No family. Just Eli, me, and the steady rhythm of waves lapping the shore. He cooked that night badly. Burnt pasta, undercooked shrimp, and the most awkwardly plated salad I'd ever seen. I usually have a chef, he admitted with a grin, rubbing the back of his neck. I figured, I said laughing, but points for effort. We sat by the fireplace after dinner, wrapped in blankets, the baby bump between us now visible under my soft cotton dress. He reached over and gently laid a hand on it. I still can't believe there's a person growing in there, he whispered. I still can't believe you're here. He looked at me more serious now. Serena, I meant what I said. I don't regret this. Not any of it. But I don't just want to be in your life because of the baby. I blinked. I want to be in your life, he continued, because I'm falling in love with you. I didn't expect it. Didn't plan it. But it's real. Tears welled up before I could stop them. For weeks I'd been bracing myself for this to end, for him to get bored, overwhelmed, or change his mind. But here he was. Still choosing me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring box. My breath caught. It wasn't a big show. No flash, no drama. Just him, kneeling on one knee in front of the fireplace, with firelight dancing in his eyes. Marry me, he said softly. Let me protect you, love you, and raise this child with you. Not out of obligation, but because I want to. With everything in me. I couldn't speak at first. Then I whispered, yes. And just like that, my life began again. We had a small ceremony 2 weeks later. No press. No extravagance. Just a garden, a few close people Eli trusted, and a ring that felt like a promise etched into my soul. I wore a cream lace gown that hugged the curve of my growing belly. Eli looked at me like I was the only person in the world. He whispered his vows into my ear and I cried through the whole thing. We weren't perfect. We didn't have a fairy tale beginning. But we had something more powerful than that. We had survival. Healing. Real love built on real scars. After the wedding, he surprised me with a nursery designed by one of the top decorators in the city. Pastel walls, plush rugs, golden stars painted on the ceiling. I want her to grow up knowing she was always wanted, he said quietly. Her. I asked. He grinned. I peeked at the results when the doctor emailed me. Hope you're not mad. I shook my head, laughing through tears. A daughter. Our daughter. For the first time in my life I felt like I was home. Not in a place. In a person. Eli. She came into the world just after midnight on a rainy Tuesday in June. Labor was long, painful, and nothing like I'd seen in movies. I screamed. I sobbed. I cursed every man on the planet. Eli held my hand through it all, whispering words I barely heard, tears in his eyes as he watched me fight through wave after wave of pain. And then, she cried. A loud, beautiful wail that silenced the world. They placed her on my chest, all pink and wrinkled and perfect. Her tiny fingers wrapped around mine like she already knew me. My daughter. Our daughter. We named her Liana. I looked over and saw Eli completely undone. He kissed my forehead, then hers. You did it, he whispered, voice shaking. She's here. In that moment, all the pain, betrayal, and loss I'd carried melted into something I never thought I'd feel again. Peace. Recovery was slow but sweet. Eli stayed up every night rocking Liana while I rested. He handled diapers, late-night feeds, burping, singing off-key lullabies with more heart than skill. The billionaire who once closed multi-million-dollar deals in glass towers now danced around the nursery in mismatched pajamas to make his daughter smile. I loved him more every day. But peace never lasts forever. Not when you've got snakes on the outside looking in. Vanessa showed up again when Liana was 2 months old. This time she came to the house. I was in the garden with Liana in my arms when I saw her through the gate. Hair disheveled, makeup smudged, and rage simmering just under her skin. Let me in, Serena, she hissed. We need to talk. I didn't move. There's nothing left to say. You think you're better than me now? She spat. Living in a mansion, married to a billionaire, acting like the victim. I held Liana closer. I don't have to act. I was the victim. You made sure of that. Her voice cracked. You don't get to win after everything. I didn't win, I said quietly. I healed. There's a difference. Vanessa's eyes darted to Liana, then back to me. That baby should have been mine. I took a step back, stunned. What? Chris left me, she snapped. He said I wasn't good enough. My job fired me. Mom and Dad are struggling. And here you are, getting everything. I could have said 1,000 things. About karma. About choices. About how the truth always finds a way out. Instead, I turned and walked back inside. I didn't need to fight. I'd already won. That night I told Eli everything. He looked at me for a long time, then said, Do you want me to make her disappear from your life permanently? Legally, of course. I smiled. No. Let her watch from a distance. That's a worse punishment. I rocked Liana to sleep by the window, her breath warm against my chest. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one begging for love, settling for scraps, trying to earn a place in a family that never saw her. And then I looked at my reflection. A mother. A wife. A woman who chose herself and built something better from the ashes. This was my breakthrough. This was my life now. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's funny how people only realize your worth once you've stopped begging them to see it. A few months after Liana's birth, the apologies began rolling in. First, it was a letter from my mother. Handwritten, which shocked me more than the apology itself. She wrote about how she missed me, how she was misled by Vanessa, and how a mother's love never truly disappears. She mentioned wanting to meet her granddaughter. She didn't ask how I was, just focused on what she was missing. Then came the voicemail from my father. His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reading from a script. Your mother and I would like to have a conversation, Serena. It's been long enough. As if time erased betrayal. I didn't respond. But when Chris showed up at my husband's office building, that's when I truly realized how far I'd come. Eli had just taken Liana for a walk around the courtyard while I sat in his office sipping tea. His assistant knocked softly. There's a man downstairs asking to speak with your wife. He says his name is Chris. I almost dropped my cup. I hadn't heard that name spoken out loud in nearly a year. Just hearing it stirred something cold and distant in my chest. Eli looked at me. Do you want to see him? No, I said immediately. But I do want you to. Eli raised an eyebrow, then stood and left the room without another word. I watched through the security feed in the corner of the office. Chris stood awkwardly in the lobby. Wrinkled shirt, cheap shoes, no confidence left in his shoulders. When Eli approached, Chris extended a hand. Eli didn't shake it. I just wanted to talk to Serena. Maybe apologize. I've made mistakes. Eli folded his arms. Calm, collected. You didn't make mistakes, Chris. You made choices. And now you're here because those choices didn't work out the way you wanted. Chris shifted uncomfortably. I was lied to. Vanessa. You believed what you wanted to believe, Eli interrupted. And she paid the price. Now she has a new life. A family. A child. One you'll never meet. Chris blinked. Eli leaned in. You don't get to show up now and ask for closure. She already found it. Without you. And just like that he turned around and walked away. I don't know if Chris cried afterward. I don't care. What mattered was that for once someone stood up for me when I didn't have to fight for myself. Later that evening I held Liana and watched the sunset spill across the nursery walls in golden streaks. I used to think closure came from confrontation. But sometimes, it's just watching the people who broke you stand on the outside, while you live the life they said you never deserved. My parents never met Liana. Chris never got another chance. Vanessa faded into silence. Me. I finally let go. There's a quiet kind of happiness that comes after the storm. The kind that doesn't scream or sparkle. It just is. It's in the way Eli kisses Liana's forehead every morning before his meetings. It's in how she curls her fingers around mine at night, breathing softly against my chest. It's in the small things. Tea brewing in the kitchen, music playing low in the nursery, a man who doesn't just say he loves me but shows it, every single day. My fairy tale didn't start with a glass slipper. It started with betrayal. The loss. With being cast out of a family I bled for and stripped of a future I thought was mine. And somehow it led me here. I look in the mirror now and barely recognize the girl I used to be. The one who begged to be loved, who walked on eggshells to keep the peace, who believed being chosen by a man meant she was worthy. That girl was shattered. But this woman? She is whole. She wears her scars like armor and her past like a testimony. Not a tragedy but a turning point. People still whisper, you know. She landed a billionaire after being dumped. He planned it all. She got lucky. But they don't know the nights I cried myself to sleep on a shelter bed. They don't know the jobs I begged for, the hunger, the humiliation, the silence. They don't know how hard I fought to find myself again. And they don't need to. Because this life I have now, I didn't stumble into it. I earned it. I built it. And I will protect it with everything I've got. Eli came home early last week with a bouquet of tulips and a tired smile. I booked a weekend trip for the three of us, he said, lifting Liana into his arms. Just us. No phones. No meetings. Just family. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. Family. I finally have one. Not the one I was born into, but the one I chose. So this is my story. Not of revenge. Not of karma. But of rebirth. Of falling down so hard it broke me wide open. And finding love, peace, and purpose in the most unexpected place. On the other side of pain. I used to think I lost everything. Now I know I was just making space for better.